Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. The series is What Are You Good At? With my co-host Jeff Gunsberg, partner at Title Connect for all your title needs and 1031 exchanges. Today we have Adam Gould. Adam, it's great to connect with you. We've known each other for a long time, and you've known Jeff for a long time. Senior Vice President, Bellwether. I thought we could talk about when it comes to just kind of kick things off. What are you good at? Today I think, this podcast was kind of built based on that whole concept. And I think today everybody's trying to figure that out for themselves. And so how did you know what you were good at? Let's start there.
Well, from the very beginning and way before college or even my professional career, I just always I had a knack for numbers, and math was always a strong suit for me. So for me, all that came naturally. I didn't really know that I wanted to be in finance, banking, investment banking, probably until about halfway through college. But I figured it out, got a nice internship, turned that into a bank, credit training position, and that kind of kicked it all off. And here we are now 25, 26 years later. And it's, really, it's fallen into place nicely and still cranking away.
What did you like about numbers? Because I always loved numbers. I loved math. I was great at math, but I was horrible at accounting, which always kind of boggled my mind a little bit. Like, I hated accounting, hated how the numbers worked in accounting. Always thought, who cares? I'll have an accountant. Right. But I loved math. I loved math. I loved algebra, geometry. I loved all of it. So what about numbers did you love?
Really, not necessarily just plugging them in to spreadsheets or models or whatever. That was part of my career when I got started. But for me, it's visualizing trends. It's trying to project. It's just constantly analyzing things. And what I didn't like about accounting, by the way, because that was part of my business degree, was I hated doing it, going through accounting type exercises for companies that were fake, right?
Yeah.
And so as somebody who's a business owner like yourself, JD, and going back to your kind of early days as well, to be able to actually overlay things and see from a credit perspective early in my career, how are these companies performing? What kind of loans should we give them? What kind of financing should we give them? And how does it all tie together?
Yeah.
But early on for me, it was, I actually really liked the weather and meteorology. That was something I kicked around for a while. But I didn't really want to be the scientist or, the math guy just plugging in the numbers and seeing what's going to happen when the model spits it out. So, but it's always just been, I love doing math in my head and adding and, counting. That goes back to as long as I can remember. So now to see my son having any inkling of doing that is pretty cool.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say, I'll let Jeff ask the next question, but I thought you were going to say you wanted to be a meteorologist.
I did for a second.
Oh, did you? Okay.
But what I can tell you is that math, science, and college, especially if you like fraternities, don't mix very well.
Right.
We talked about this morning. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
How amazing would it be if you were wrong half the time at your job and you still had your job?
Right.
I guess
know you don't have that ability, nor do I, and nor does John.
Nor do I. Right.
So I think that's kind of how it maybe we differentiate ourselves at that place. So when we started this, Adam and I have had a relationship for such a long time too, and I came in to the office and I would notice on on Adam's cube, highlights, interest rates, all kinds of information that would elevate me, make me understand, made me come to him and ask questions and get to that kind of place of trying to understand a little bit more about what he did and why rates were the way they were, and what was kind of going on in the industry, um, which translated into what I thought was you trying to educate the other people into bring them into your kind of world. How do you think that like kind of started, or like what was the thought in your mind? Because that's how I took it, was like I saw this like this little 8.5 by 11 sheet on the edge of the desk that was telling me what was going on in the industry, and I took it that way, and I'm just curious how you saw others kind of interact with that.
Yeah, and interesting. I mean, this gets in a little bit into my background before I came to
Yeah.
Detroit. Which before we kind of went live here, I was talking to JD about it. We've all known each other collectively for over 12 years, and it started in a brokerage office that John managed, and I was the finance guru. And John came to me very early and said, "These guys really haven't seen anyone like this before. How are you going to present this? I have a couple ideas for you." But it literally every week we'd be putting our heads together and trying to figure out how we were going to do it, how I would communicate these concepts, these trends, these projections. I always hate projecting. The crystal ball shattered, 2.5 years ago now, of course. Nobody knew that we'd have higher for longer for as long as we have. But, I go back to that, and we were just putting our heads together all the time. And what John was so good at, and what he really taught me more about the sales side, because he was in charge of 40, 45 brokers in the office. He's like, how can you ingratiate yourself with this many people that are out there looking for deals every day? They're calling on sponsors. They'll take you to meetings. They'll take you to local conferences. You'll go out to ICSC Recon. They'll introduce you to people out there. And he had a couple ideas, and I thought through some things and came up with some stuff. And interestingly enough, the sheets I have on my back wall here, not Grand Teton National Park, but the other ones they don't move. One's a debt constant chart, and the other one's a bond rating sheet as well. But they all still play into everything. But at the time, it was really coming up with that live data on a weekly basis that might help some of the sales brokers in the office really have those talking points for how to get everybody else's attention. Because it was a new angle, right, at the time for them.
Yeah. I think it was a new angle for all, God, I don't, at the time that it was going on for me too, it was really nice to just see somebody take the time to educate the brokers on what was going on in the market so they could get an understanding. That's how I took it, and somebody who was in the office a lot, I didn't, I had my, know enough to be dangerous mentality, but I didn't see anyone really, until you were kind of in there. It wasn't like anyone was really trying to educate the team. And I think that was a really good thing that you did and you brought to the table was, and a quote unquote, what are you good at kind of a thing that I take from this is, you being able to, bring things down to a level that people can understand, to a place where it could elevate their game.
Well, it's about communication, right? And one of the things I was thinking about before chatting with you guys, again, over the last 12 plus years, we've all chatted so much here and there, but thinking about how it's relevant to this conversation, I think about it when I'm working with underwriters and we're underwriting Fannie and Freddie deals, or I'm working on a big HUD deal right now that I think, Jeff, we're going to probably be working on together, hopefully. And I get in the weeds with my underwriters sometimes. And I think to myself, well, how do I get back up to 10,000 feet and look down just like an owner would? And that helps you actually relate to the process and the strategy and everything else, right? It works for life co-loans. Then you have complicated CMBS deals. I mean, sometimes you just got to take a step back and get out of the weeds. I go back to the point in my career when I went from like analyst to senior associate, whatever, associate, senior associate, VP, to those days. And one of the hardest things that I had to learn was, how do I get from putting together these these complex models and putting together these offering memorandums or financing packages. And then how do I now have somebody else do that, but still know the deal as well? Like you have these little transitions within your career that just happen organically. But I think communication is where it all stands, because you could be a numbers person, but how do you communicate with people? How do you normalize that conversation? How do you make it so that a lot of people can understand each other?
Yeah, right.
So, Adam, let's talk a little bit more about visualizing trends, right? You talk based on what you just said. You mentioned earlier visualizing trends. There's a lot of factors today that shift trends. We could point to a lot of different things going on in the market, the economy, the world, et cetera. And so, how do you visualize trends? How do you put probability on trends? How are you, what indicators are you looking at? And then what's the shelf life of a trend? That's the big question.
Tough thing.
That's
a tough thing.
Right.
I'm going to try to keep it really simple, just because I've looked over the last 2.5 years. It's a whole new playbook, right? And you got to learn how to call the plays. You got to learn how to go with the flow. Again, if we all had crystal balls that didn't shatter 2.5 years ago, we wouldn't be working anymore probably, because we could have called this and traded on it, right? But you can go, one of the things that everybody's very focused on right now, they're always so worried about what the Fed's going to say, what the Fed's going to do, right? And here's what I'm going to say to make this really simple. Until inflation goes away, there's no way that we should be reducing interest rates, barring a massive recession where we would need to really stimulate the economy, right? So could the Fed cut 1 or 2 times this year? Sure. Is that going to have a big impact on 5-year and 10-year treasuries where I'm pricing all my deals? Probably not. It will on floating rate debt like construction loans. But I mean, that's really what I worry about. So it's like everybody wants to worry about the next, call it the next 3, 6, 9 months. And what I'm worried about is what deals am I working on Monday? And how do we make progress and move them to the next step by Friday? And all these external factors outside of that, I can't control, right? And I learned that a while ago. So I would much rather think about where we are in the moment, where were we last week, where are we going over the next week?
Yeah.
And make the best decisions today based on the information you have today. Now, one of the nice luxuries we have with where we're at in this cycle, in this portion of the economic cycle, is we've had higher interest rates now for over 2 years. You guys remember the bank scare 2.5 years ago. Everybody thought the world was going to end. I don't like to get too high. I don't like to get too low.
Community banks, right? They're going down. Oh my God! Now we got 1, 2.
And now credit unions are stronger than banks. And the only banks that you really saw fallout from were the ones that didn't plan appropriately and mismatch their funding. They're out there, all of a sudden they have to pay 6% or 5%, 6% in deposits. They were buying 1.5% 10-year treasury notes as investments leading up to that point. It's just bad planning and bad mismatching of funds. But I think you can get like anything. Anybody that is in finance, banking, anybody that's in anything that they do, there's always so much noise out there. And you just gotta focus on what you can control from your office, from your household. 99% of everything else is stuff you can't control, and it can get you worked up. But at this point, where's that going to get you?
Yeah.
Right?
Let's shift gears a little bit. Thank you for that. Let's shift gears a little bit and go back. You tell me 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. Who is a mentor who planted some seeds in you that you can point to today that had an impact on not only what you're doing today, but maybe also what you're good at?
Sure. I mean, I'll go to my first professional boss. His name was Tom Aronson. Steered me through kind of, lending, asset-based lending, commercial banking. Very successful guy in his own right in the the finance and banking community in Chicago still, where I started my career. It just kind of laid the groundwork for me. And I spent a couple of years with them, and it was a great springboard. I knew I didn't really want to work for a bank for that long. I wanted to do something a little bit more, as we would say in the industry, esoteric. But that was one. And then I would say a gig or two later was a guy named Dan Duffy when I was at Capital Source. And I really helped him build out our debt capital markets group with both loan syndications, doing a couple $100 million deals and selling off a portion of the loans, and also raising a CLO at the time. And I go back to two people like that in my career, and in two very different ways, more from a credit perspective and kind of learning about banking to start with, to somebody who is more focused on capital markets and kind of showed me the way into just a different angle within, the debt or the lending community.
Yeah.
So, I feel like it's just so hard to, I think a lot of people in today's times, feel like they need to continually try and reinvent themselves. I feel like you've stayed really true to yourself and what you do and what you're good at. And, haven't stepped too far outside of the bounds, right? Of that, and I've been really confident in that. Has that come up like in your, professional career, like where you've kind of thought like maybe I should shift or do this or do that, or, try and expand or go here, go there, and like stick kind of, and decided to say, you know what, no, this is what I'm good at, and kind of stuck there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think at this point in my career, I think it'd be very hard to move within what I do. I think that I'm at a company that I truly have enjoyed the culture day in and day out since I've been here for over 10 years. And, I've thought about it before. Like, I think one thing I could probably do is be more of a capital markets and financial expert for an owner, maybe. But then I go back to look, for 25, 26 years, I like being a deal guy, and I like the creativity.
Right.
Right now I'm working on HUD loans. I'm working on, I'm actually raising $10 million of equity for a new construction project in Southeast Michigan, trying to get more involved kind of the structured finance and equity raising side of things. Fannie and Freddie all the time, CMBS, Lifeco, Bridge. I mean, it keeps me on my toes, and I'm learning constantly, and it's worked out really well in my career. And look, nobody wants to be too comfortable, of course. So I'm always thinking about that. I mean, I don't want to tell JD that, especially, right? On a weekly basis, how can I do some different things to stay on my toes, stay creative, build my business better? But I'm genuinely, happy with not only the company I'm at, the culture that we have here at BWE, but just in what I do on a daily, weekly, quarterly, annual basis.
What's the biggest lesson? Sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
No, yeah, you know what? It's I think it's identifying that. The reason I asked the question was because, God, I get pulled in so many different directions. I feel like from, client perspective, family life, own personal desires, all the stuff kind of pulls me away. But you know what? It always brings me back to the core of what got me to where I am. And I feel like you're the same way. So I'm glad to hear you say that too. And you know what you know, right? Like, we're good at what we're good at, and I feel like you're amazing at what you do. And it's it's one of those things you have to kind of, it goes on day to day where you think to yourself, okay, like, maybe there's stuff, I could do this or I could do that, or, you can always expand your horizons. But, I feel like the mainstay is always, kept me where I'm at. And I think the same for you. So it's great.
I like it.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you've learned in the last 10 years?
That if interest rates go way down, they're going to go way back up afterwards. Not sustainable in one way and higher for longer the other way.
Yeah. What's the biggest lesson you've learned personally?
How to balance life and family for the first time. You know, my wife, you guys know Betsy and my son Mitchell. And, you know, I just think that we were later to the game in the parenting thing. And it's just amazing how much it adds to your life. But it also forces you, if you're set in your ways for, you know, 18 years. And we had so much independence then to take so much more of your energy and put it towards, you know, an incredible child. It's taught me a lot.
Yeah.
But it also teaches me a lot about what's important. It gives you that perspective, like we were talking about. You know, drown out some of the noise that's outside of your office or your home, because again, 90, 95, 98, 99% of it, you can't control it.
Yeah.
And the household and your office, you know, in that order are kind of the two most important things to start with.
It's interesting too, because, you know, the whole reason you do it, right? Like what's supposed to be the entire reason is because you want that, you know, like you want to have security and, you know, be there for your family and you want to be present and all that stuff. Yet what we have to do is be present for our clients and be there and doing that to make sure that we have that security. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword a little bit there. So I experienced
circular reference,
the same thing.
In spreadsheet talk, circular reference.
Yeah. So agreed. Yeah. So we're you know, I'm constantly battling and you know, trying to compartmentalize and put things into place. So I'm wondering, you know, for you is like mentor wise, what's the best thing somebody ever told you, you know, that like, you know, got you to the place that you are now, or, you know, is there one or two things?
Nah, look, I don't have anything specific for this conversation that I've really been, you know, dwelling on recently. When I think of, and Jeff, you alluded to it a little bit, just that consistency and being genuine. And not, I mean, one of the things that I try to do all the time, if things ever get heated, it's usually not going to be from my side, but things get heated from another side. It's like, as opposed to just, you know, responding and reacting too quickly and loudly, it's amazing what happens if you take a deep breath and pause for 10 or 15 seconds. Totally. It actually diffuses the situation pretty quickly, because somebody
there's a ton of truth to that.
Yeah, I mean, a reaction versus a response is a big difference, right? Like, you know, I react, and then usually when I react, it's the wrong thing.
Yeah.
If I wait to respond, it's better.
Yeah.
So the pause, I think, is a huge.
I've got another one, because a lot of this has come up. It's happened much more frequently over the last 24 or 36 months, but just if there's something that's going on in a deal, you're better off just getting it out there. How do we solve it? Because if you're
good news, bad news,
some of my competitors that might hide that or whatever, I mean, it's going to be twice as hard to unwind, you know, in a week or two if, you know, you just don't get it out there. It's all about transparency.
Yeah.
And once you're halfway into a deal, there's only one way to get out, truly, and that's close the deal, right?
Right.
At all costs, right?
Yep.
Assuming it still makes sense and there's not an issue with due diligence or something. But those are just a couple of things I've learned over the years.
Adam, last question. A book, a TED Talk, an article that's had a big impact on you.
Not the most exciting, but The Big Short by Michael Lewis.
That's a good one.
And really, when I was 2007, 2008, I actually worked at an investment bank within a structured finance group until I didn't, right? I learned a lot from that until, right? I was part of those casualties, you know, running an $18 billion conduit out of our structured finance group. But what was so neat to me, and I wouldn't watch the movie for a while. The book came out right after. I mean, it was like
that movie was great.
Yeah, but I waited because it was one of my favorite books I've ever read. And I like Moneyball and Liar's Poker and everything else, but it was so relevant to me, who was a casualty at an investment bank. I got whacked like 2/3 of our group because I was the later guy in. But then to be able to read the book and like actually understand most of it, hard for me not to reflect And I never went and worked for a quote unquote investment bank again after that, but at least I can say I did it once.
Yeah. Well, this was great. Adam, listen, I've known you for a long time. We worked together for a long time. It's great having you on the podcast. I thought you had been on it. I didn't realize that you've never been on it.
Well, one of the other things I've learned a lot is how to be patient. So there's a great example.
Yes. And here he is now.
Here you are now.
Thank God we have this to present to the group.
But I just want to extract, you said a lot of great things, but finding the pause in your day, finding the pause in the deal, finding the pause for yourself, finding the pause for other people, that is critical. I think community, we talk a lot about that when it comes to responding, like Jeff said, versus reacting. It's so important in everything that we do. Not always easy. I don't say it as I'm an expert with it, but it is something that we all have to work on a regular basis. So I appreciate everything you did and your time today and what you shared. Specifically, just want to kind of highlight that. Jeff, I'll let you close it out.
Yeah, you know what? I've worked with Adam for a very, very long time. He's a consummate professional. He's a guy who's likable. He's friendly, but he knows his business, and so I've spent a lot of my career around Adam and introducing him to clients of mine, and he's always done an amazing job, and I feel like he deserves that praise for it for sure. And if anyone out there is thinking about financing a project of any kind, leveraging Adam's knowledge and his team's capability and just their dedication to this market, I think is definitely something that should be done. Why not have some somebody who's been around for a very long time and gets the marketplace, help direct you in what your goals might be and what you're looking for on a property that you've got. So kudos to you, Adam, always on what you've done and how you've created a nice place for yourself in the market.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. We'll keep it rolling and continue to find ways to work together.
Let's do it.
For sure.
Let's do it. All right.
Wonderful.
Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thanks.
See you guys.
Yeah.